The conveners of this summit remind us that the word curriculum has its origins in the image of a path going round a race course. A path like that makes a circuit, retracing its steps, covering ground repeatedly without advancing. By going in laps, one could accumulate considerable mileage but not actually go anywhere. In the word also is a sense of speed, corre. We are on the move and quickly. But in thinking about new possibilities of knowing, I wonder if we might also seek a different pace, a different way to move. Perhaps it is more of a winding path, and we do not know where we are going or when we will arrive. Maybe there are wrong turns, barricades, or bad roads. And whom shall we meet along the way, and how might they change our journey? I am reminded of a passage, an invitation, really, from Hélène Cixous, crucial to my own personal curriculum. Whenever I set out on new work, I consult these words like a waymarker at the beginning of a trail. She says, "If you follow me, perhaps you will lose yourself. But if you do, you are following me. To find, one has to lose. One finds only by losing. If we lose ourselves, and we must, there always remains the path." Venice is a good place to think about getting lost in this way, and not just because of its many winding passages. The first time I came here was to research and write about the history of a woman born in late 19th century in what is now Darfur, who was kidnapped and enslaved as a child and eventually brought to Venice, presented as a gift to a merchant's wife. In Venice, she provoked a political crisis because her conversion to Christianity challenged the law that no one baptized in Italy could be a slave. The freedom of her body was dependent on the salvation of her soul, and the question of how the two were connected in her mind is a mystery my research, of course, could not solve. She was later canonized as a saint. In wandering this city while researching her life story, I stumbled into glimpses of the lives of present-day migrants in this country and dove into the long story of power that this city has wielded and lost, where consolidation of military and financial might meant that it was also a center of culture. We know that such centers shift according to the age. The path I would like to follow departs from those centers not just geographically, in order to take in the scenery or presume that we can temporarily gain a new point of view. The departure is best proposed by the Jamaican-born scholar Sylvia Wynter, whose work is so disruptive that I read it painfully slow, only a few pages at a time. She wrote an essay in 1992 in response to the Rodney King beating and subsequent riots. The work is called No Humans Involved, and the name comes from the inside joke popular in the LA District Attorney's Office at the time. Criminal cases involving young black men were designated as NHI, No Humans Involved. Wynter, in 1992, doesn't approach this as a question that could be solved by so-called national dialogues on race or a problem confined to certain backwards people or advanced by slogans. Hashtags didn't exist at the time. She sees it as a problem of curriculum. What was wrong, she asked, with what those highly educated lawyers knew? What was wrong with how they'd been taught that could make such a thing possible? What they'd been taught was what it means to be human, and everything that unfolded from the definition of that humanity going back 5 centuries, so that today, headlines in Europe speak of a migrant crisis, just as the headlines in the United States speak of a crisis at the border of my home state, Texas, but none would devote column inches to the histories of what becomes news, because they would have to call it a rape, pillage, and plunder crisis, or a late capitalism crisis, or an imperialism crisis, and admit that it is an inevitable fallout from the massive robbing of resources and people from certain parts of the planet, because they were not defined as human. And now, so many years later, people are following the paths of those resources. Following Sylvia Wynter, a massive undoing of all that came from this definition is required, not just as a thought experiment, but to avoid the catastrophe that threatens the very existence of this planet. It is there that we must begin. So this is the inspiration for the path I am proposing, the imperative to undo what has delivered us to the current moment. It is a path by which we must be willing to lose everything. I propose that our curriculum is not so much a set of text like that presented to students with the expectation that upon completion they will arrive at knowledge. It is not even so simple a thing as inserting untold stories and history from below into existing structures. It is also the method by which we acquire that knowledge, because the methods themselves have been defined by, defended by, and designed in order to consolidate power. And what I am fascinated by in the artists who will follow me is the methods they have devised and indeed are constantly revising in order to produce new ways of knowing and not knowing. Their methods are speculative. There are no outcomes, metrics, measurables, deliverables, which artists are so often now expected to employ when working in the public sphere. There are no solutions and forecasts, as we writers are forever expected to pronounce. I'm not sure it works that way. Here's where we come back to speed. The issues that all of us concern or work with are urgent. So when I speak of a different pace, I'm not thinking of gradualism or caution necessarily, but merely the way one would need to proceed if taking up the challenge of Sylvia Wynter. Following such a path, one would walk carefully and not know in advance the destination, but we know where we'll end up if continuing down the current road. A first step is to abandon everything we think we know.